Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the matchups in the college football playoffs. This is my Christmas gift to all of you. I'm going to help you if you do like to put money on games. I'm going to help you decide on which teams to put your money on, if you should take the over or the under, things like that. We're going to get into it like we always do with all the numbers, and I will give you my thoughts. I'll tell you what my picks would be. But I want to give you enough information that you can make an educated decision for yourself, all inside of one big box with a nice bow on it. And without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about Texas versus Washington. All right, so let's start off with the Texas Longhorns offense versus the Washington Huskies defense. Texas had a strength of schedule of 11, that is per ESPN, and Washington had a strength of schedule of 14. All right, so starting off with total offense, Texas was ranked number 9 in the country with 475.9 yards per game, 6.65 yards per play. And then they were the number 16th team in the country in scoring with 36.2 points per game. And they had 931 plays on the season. Washington's defense was number 90th in total defense, giving up 396.9 yards per game, 5.5 yards per play. Number 50th in scoring, giving up 23.6 points per game, and they had 929 plays on defense. Now for the Longhorns rushing offense, they had 499 attempts, which was 53.5% of their offense. Okay, so they were number 23 in the country in rushing with 189.1 yards per game, 4.9 yards per play, 26 touchdowns on the ground. And Washington had 408 plays, which was 43.9% of the snaps that they had on defense. And they had the number 38th ranked rushing defense in the country, giving up 133.8 yards per game on the ground, 4.26 yards per play, and 18 touchdowns. All right, now for the Longhorns passing offense. They ran 432 plays, which was 46.4% of their offense. They are ranked the number 18th passing offense in the entire country with 286.8 yards per game, 8.63 yards per attempt, 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, completing passes at 67.8%, and they are the number 63rd ranked team in the country as far as giving up sacks with 2 per game. Washington's pass defense had 521 attempts against them, which is 56% of all of their defensive snaps. They are ranked number 120th in the country in passing defense, giving up 263.2 yards per game, 6.57 yards per attempt, 22 touchdowns. They have 16 interceptions on the season, and they are also allowing 59.6% of passes to be completed on their defense. They are also number 120th in the country in sacks. All right, so looking at those numbers, the first thing that jumps out to me is how evenly matched, their snap counts were, right? So to me, that just kind of speaks to the fact that the Big 12 and the Pac-12 have very similar styles of play throughout their conferences. So what you have to look at after that is how do they match up as far as, the rankings go, because I feel like this is a situation where those rankings really do mean something. Now, they don't always mean everything because we do know that different conferences play different styles of football. There's a different level of competition as well. But it does seem like Texas has a very strong edge, in their offense versus Washington's defense. So I feel like Texas will be able to put up some points in this game, and Texas will probably have a very difficult time trying to slow them down. Now, something else, just another caveat to that is Texas, I believe, has a much stronger roster than Washington does. They've got a lot more talent than Washington does, especially on defense. Look out for Texas to, again, if you're just looking at just the first numbers that we talked about, not even looking at the actual rosters, I really do think that Texas is going to be able to score almost at will versus Washington. They've got a very strong run game. They're very strong up front. They've got a great quarterback in Quinn Ewers. And, I think that they are going to be able to really, really dominate and probably dictate the entire flow of this football game if Steve Sarkisian chooses to do that. But let's go on to taking a look at Texas on defense and Washington on offense. All right, so Washington is ranked number 12 in the country in total offense with 469.1 yards per game, 7.23 yards per play, and they are the number 11th scoring offense in the country with 37.7 points per game, and they have 844 plays as an offense on the season. Now, the Longhorns defense is ranked number 24th in the country in total defense, giving up 321.7 yards per game, 5 yards per play, and they're ranked at number 13th scoring defense in the country, giving up 17.5 points per game. They have also seen 830 snaps on defense. Now on to Washington's rushing offense. They have had 360 plays rushing the football, which is 42.6% of their offense. They are ranked number 98th in the country in rushing offense with 125.2 yards per game, 4.5 yards per play, and they have 26 touchdowns on the ground. All right, now the Longhorns defense has seen 366 rushes on the season. That's 44% of what they've seen on defense. They are ranked the number 3 rushing defense in the entire country, only allowing 80.8 yards per game, 2.8 yards per play, and only 7 touchdowns. Washington has passed the ball 484 times this season. That's 57.3% of their offense, and they're ranked number 1 in terms of passing offense in the entire country with 343.8 yards per game, 9.2 yards per attempt, 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, completing passes at 66%, and they are also ranked number 4 in the country as far as sacks allowed, only allowing 0.85 per game. Okay, and the Longhorns have seen 464 passes this season, which is 55.9% of the plays that they've seen on defense. They are ranked number 94 in the country in passing defense, giving up 240.8 yards per game, 6.7 yards per attempt, 19 touchdowns. They also have 16 interceptions on the season, and they are only allowing 59.9% of completions against their defense. Now, they're also ranked number 36 in the country as far as team sacks. They are getting 2.46 sacks per game. All right, so looking at those numbers, again, I would definitely have to get the edge to Texas. Now, I know that some of y'all are probably going to say, well, dang, it looks like, Washington is not giving up a whole lot of sacks, but they're also not going up against the same type of a front as what Texas has. So this is just the way that I see it, okay? Texas has some dogs up front. We talk about that all the time on this channel. It's all about front 7 play. I think that Texas is going to outmatch Washington's front. I think that Texas will have a very, very strong advantage up front over Washington. So it's going to be tough to see, can they out scheme Texas in a way where they can get the ball out of Penix Jr.'s hands quick enough, out there, to the outside and, just kind of depend on those 3 NFL wide receivers that they have out there to be able to make some plays. I think that they can have some success doing that early on, but it's just not going to last for an entire 60-minute game. It's just not. At some point, Texas is going to come up and try to force Washington into throwing the ball down the field. Now, obviously, Washington is going to test those waters early on. They're going to say, well, let's see what we can do. You know what I mean? Like, we've had a great offensive line this entire season. Hey, maybe we can hold up, up against Texas's front. But that's not going to bode well for them. I can tell you that right now. If they do anything beyond a 3-step drop, there's going to be pressure on Penix Jr. I've looked at Washington play several times. Their offensive line is too small. And, I don't want to say too weak just because that sounds bad, but they're not going to be able to match up well versus Texas up front at all. It's going to be really, really tough. So I think that what Washington is going to have to be able to do is run the football well. It's not something that they do well at all. We saw that from the numbers. So, again, I feel like this favors Texas heavily. And if you look at these rosters, right, Texas has the number 6 ranked roster in this entire country with 9 5-stars, 47 4-stars, and 27 3-stars. Now, if you look at Washington, they are ranked number 26 in the entire country with no 5-stars, 27 4-stars, and 49 3-stars. And that brings up the age-old question: is it the X's and O's or is it the Jimmys and Joes? Jimmys and Joes definitely favors Texas, I would say, very, very heavily, especially up front. X's and O's could be kind of a push. I will say that, Sark has kind of been doing this a little bit longer as a head coach on different levels. And, obviously he did also coach at Washington. He's probably going to want to try to prove a point out there. But I'm just going to say this, man, last time saying it for this matchup, front 7 play is critical. Texas definitely has a very strong edge right there. It's difficult to be able to push the football down the field without having a good offensive line. And that's something that kind of concerns me for Washington's front. Now, again, kind of like I talked about earlier, okay? I think that Texas's offensive line is going to be able to open up a whole lot of space for their running backs. They're going to be able to buy some time for, Quinn Ewers to be able to throw that football down the football field. I just feel like Texas is going to be able to kind of dictate the terms of how this game is going to be won and lost, okay? Outside of any type of, crazy turnover situation, something like that, which is what happened to Texas versus Oklahoma, I do not see a way that Washington is going to be able to win this game. I do think that it's going to start off, kind of close. I would say maybe up into halftime, the game may be within, 5, 6, 7 points. But coming out of halftime, the depth of the rosters is going to kind of start to take over this football game. And I think that Texas is going to run away with it. Now, the spread right now is 4.5 in favor of Texas. If I'm betting on this game, I'm going to take that all day long right now. I would not be surprised if that opens up a little bit as we get closer and closer to kickoff. So, again, if y'all like to put money on games, go ahead and put that money on Texas right now just to be able to cover that spread. That's an easy way for you to be able to make your money. I feel extremely confident in this. I'm not a betting man myself, but if I ever was going to bet on a game, this would be one of them. I feel very, very confident in this. Now, this game is going to be played indoors. So a lot of people are saying, well, Washington's going to be able to, showcase their speed. I guess that they're forgetting that Texas has a whole lot of speed too, right? Like, Texas ain't slow, dude. They've got some ballers out there from top to bottom. They've got an extremely talented roster. They've got a coach that is capable, that's been in situations like this, either as a coordinator, maybe not as a head coach, but he knows what it takes. Okay, he completely gets it. He's played or he's coached in the NFL as well. So he's going to have a very solid game plan put together. And, again, I feel very, very confident in this one. If you're going to bet on it, put your money on Texas to cover this spread. All right, now let's take a look at the Alabama offense versus the Michigan defense. Keep in mind that Alabama had the number 1 strength of schedule and Michigan has the number 14th ranked strength of schedule. All right, so Alabama had 820 plays of total offense. That ranked the number 53rd total offense in the entire country with 401.2 yards per game, 6.3 yards per play. Number 18th in the country in scoring with 35.1 points per game. Michigan only had 728 plays on defense. They are ranked the number 2 total defense in the entire country with 239.7 yards per game given up, 4.28 yards per play, and they are the number 1 ranked scoring defense in the entire country, only allowing 9.46 points per game. All right, now Alabama rushed the ball 518 times. That's 63% of their offense. Ranked number 46 in the country in rushing, 172.7 yards per game, 4.3 yards per play, 30 touchdowns on the ground. And Michigan had 387 rushing plays on defense. That's 53.1% of all the snaps that they saw on defense. They're ranked number 5 in the country in rushing defense, 87.1 yards per game, 2.93 yards per play, and they only gave up 7 touchdowns. All right, now Alabama's passing offense had 302 plays. That's 36.8% of their offense. Number 58 in the country in passing offense, 228.5 yards per game, 9.83 yards per attempt, and 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 63.5% passes completed, and they are ranked number 115th in the country in sacks given up with 3.3 per game. Michigan saw 341 passes this season. That's 46.8% of all the plays that they saw on defense. They're ranked number 2 in terms of passing defense in the entire country, giving up 152.6 yards per game, 5.8 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns. They have 16 interceptions, and they are only allowing 54.5% of passes to be completed. And they're also ranked number 36 in the country in sacks with 2.46 per game. All right, so the first thing that kind of jumps out to me from those stats is I didn't know that Alabama ran the football that much. It just doesn't seem like it if you actually watch them play. But part of the reason for that is that Milroe will scramble some. So, those numbers are a little bit skewed. And, also you look at Michigan's defense. They're ranked highly in a whole lot of categories, but it's also because the Big Ten just does not have very good offenses, okay? Like, that just is what it is. There's also a pretty big talent gap between these two teams. We'll get into those numbers after we talk about Michigan's offense versus Alabama's defense. But just for now, I think that This is a very, very interesting matchup. I'm going to be, curious to see, can Alabama run the football on Michigan's defense? I think that they can. I just don't think that Michigan has seen a team with the types of playmakers that Alabama has. And a lot of people, I've heard and listened to a whole lot of different YouTube videos breaking down some of these games, especially coming from these Michigan fans. They seem to think, well, we're not hearing a whole lot about these NFL caliber guys like we have in the past and blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe you're not, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they're still on that roster. They may just be a little bit younger, but they may have their breakout game versus a defense like this. And, I hate to say this because I don't want to sound biased, but just to keep it real with y'all, the speed difference is tremendous. It's going to be very, very tremendous whenever you're talking about SEC versus Big Ten. Talked about that in the Tennessee versus Iowa game. I think that this is a game that, it'll be very interesting. Is Michigan going to try to play man-to-man coverage, which is what they mostly do? Or are they going to play more of a shell and try to sit back and stop that big play from happening? I think that they're going to try to probably, maybe do some of both. But I think that if you look at those numbers, you've got to try to find a way to stop Alabama's running game because they run the ball like 63% of the time. So it seems like that should be what you want to try to stop. If you try to play man-to-man, I just don't like Michigan's odds on that front. I think that Alabama definitely has the much better athletes, not just on the outside, but on the inside too. We'll touch on that just a little bit more once we go to defense. Let's go ahead and get to that right now. All right, so Michigan's offense versus Alabama's defense, okay? Michigan had 808 total plays on offense. They were ranked the number 68th team in the country in total offense with 380.5 yards per game, 6.1 yards per play. Number 14 in the country in points per game with 36.7. And Alabama's defense saw 824 plays this season. They're number 19th in the country in total defense with 313.3 yards given up per game, 4.9 yards per play. Number 16 in scoring defense with 18.3 points given up per game. Michigan rushed the ball 493 times this season. That's 61% of their offense. Number 60th in the country in rushing offense with 161.8 yards per game, 4.2 yards per play, 35 touchdowns on the ground. And Alabama's defense has seen 438 rushes, which is 53.1% of all the snaps they've seen on defense. They're ranked number 29 in the country in rushing defense, giving up 124.5 yards per game, 3.7 yards per play, and 14 touchdowns on the ground. Michigan passed the ball 315 times this season. That's only 38.9% of their offense. They're ranked number 72 in the country with 218.8 yards per game, 9 yards per attempt, 21 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 73.9% completions. They've also given up 1.38 sacks per game, which is good for number 28th in the entire country. All right, and Alabama's defense has seen 386 passes this season. That's 46.8% of all the snatches they've seen on defense. They're ranked number 24 in the country in passing defense, giving up 188.8 yards per game, 6.3 yards per attempt, 14 touchdowns. They have 12 interceptions. They are allowing 59% of passes to be completed. They're ranked number 12 in the country in team sacks with 2.92 per game. All right, so let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Alabama has 18 5-stars, 56 4-stars, and 10 3-stars. Michigan has 2 5-stars, 45 4-stars, and 38 3-stars. All right, so I had to get that out of the way just to kind of let y'all know that there is a pretty big gap, as far as the blue chip players. Now, Michigan does have a lot of 4-star players, which is really good for them because some of those 4-star players can perform like 5-star players on any given Saturday. Now, my whole thing is whenever you watch them play, I just do not see a whole lot of dynamic playmakers, and they may have them on their roster, but they just don't utilize them for whatever reason. What they like to do is run that football. They throw it a whole lot to their tight ends. I really do like their tight end, by the way. I think that he is probably an overlooked guy, maybe, kind of underrated as well. But I do feel like Alabama can match up with them pretty easily. Now, Alabama likes to play a match zone. Coach Saban talks a lot about building a wall at that line of scrimmage. So they're not huge on getting penetration necessarily in the run game. But I do think that they're going to be able to out kind of physical and, out athlete Michigan for lack of a better word for me to use. I think that this is going to be really, really tough sledding for Michigan's offense. It's really tough to go up against a Nick Saban coach defense with this much talent and be able to just play bully ball versus them. And that's just not going to happen. The one thing that Nick Saban struggles with is a quarterback that's mobile. Michigan's quarterback ain't that mobile, okay? He can run. He's a good-looking athlete, but he hasn't run much this season. Are they saving it for this game? Probably not. Do you want to try to put him out on the line with some dogs, okay, some real dogs that are going to be getting after him? I don't think that you do. Now, he is going to run it some. He's going to have to try to scramble some because I think that Alabama's going to do a great job in passing situations of stopping what Michigan likes to do. So, at the end of the day, right now, what we have is a spread of 1.5 favoring Michigan, okay? I talked about this a little bit earlier, maybe a couple of weeks ago in one of the other videos. I said this is kind of like fool's gold. This is Vegas trying to get a whole lot of money in, favoring Michigan because, they know that there's a whole lot of Michigan fans out there. But do not be fooled by this, okay? This is a game that I do think that it's going to kind of be relatively close, but I think that Alabama's going to be able to win this one by at least 10 points very, very easily. It was a lot higher than that coming into this thing, and I could see a situation where Alabama could really, really blow Michigan out, but I do think that Michigan's going to fight hard. Coach Jim Harbaugh is a very good coach, especially whenever we're talking about NFL. As a Falcons fan, I'm hoping that maybe we can pick him up because he knows what to do with some talent. Again, his roster is outmatched from a talent perspective pretty heavily in this game. He just kind of sticks to what he does. It's not going to be a whole lot of wrinkles to this. They might have 1 or 2 trick plays or something like that, but they just have not done well in these types of situations in the past, okay? They were actually favored by 7.5 points versus TCU last season, and they lost that game. That was a game that I actually felt like coming into it that Michigan was going to be able to win pretty easily, and they actually lost. So I think that just kind of goes to show that Big Ten ball, I'm not trying to pick on them, but just honestly speaking, that style of play does not travel very well to other conferences unless it is Ohio State. Their style of play travels well. And I think that a big part of the reason for that is because they've got a lot of good players. I think that their roster matches up well, as far as the athletes versus these other conferences. They just don't have a coach that can beat Michigan. Ryan Day, he just cannot figure out how to beat them. He's going to have to get some more wrinkles to his scheme, probably get an offensive analyst, whatever. I'm not going to talk too much about them. This is about Michigan versus Bama. Again, I would most definitely take Bama in this one all day. Even if the spread was, we'll call it 7.5 points. I do think that this spread might kind of tighten up as, we get closer to kickoff. I would take Alabama all day. I think that, again, Alabama can win this game by at least 10 points. To me, that's an absolute no-brainer. There's just no way for Michigan to play the way that they played all season and be able to beat Alabama almost at their own game. If you look at a whole lot of those numbers, it's very, very evenly matched as far as what they like to do. You're not going to be able to beat a team that is more talented than you doing what they do. So that's it for this video. I hope that y'all enjoyed it. Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope that y'all are able to put some money on these games and win something. Again, it's my Christmas present to y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in, for being a big part of this channel. We are very, very thankful for everyone that chimes in with comments, that watches, all of our members. And, we would also like to open up another invitation for y'all to become members of this channel. We will continue to have more inside information, and we will also have a whole lot of film breakdown, with these college teams, with our players, things like that. So hope that y'all will all consider becoming a member of this channel. Just click that join button right below this video. But with all that being said, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.